Okay, I'm going to make this video very specific to the issue that I want to address. There is a term that's hugely overused by activists of all political persuasions, all agendas, and there is a term that's hugely overused by journalists when describing activists. And I think that both of these terms probably should have never been used the way that they are used, and they certainly should have, their usage in the way that they're used today should have been retired long ago. They create more confusion, misunderstanding than they could possibly be of any use linguistically in terms of a way to communicate with people. One, anti-government protesters. This term, anti-government protesters, is incredibly useless, except to sort of erase the issue that whatever the issue is that a protest is actually about is erased from the equation by this term. And it's lazy, and as journalists, you really shouldn't be using this term. Because most protesters are not anti-government. Most protesters are asking for a change in government, all the way up to protesters who want to overthrow their government. They're not calling for no government. They're calling for a new government. And most protesters who are calling for something short of regime change, like the Black Lives Matter protesters right now, they're not anti-government protesters, and no one should refer to them as that. There may be some that are. There may be some that are anti-government protesters, but those should just be referred to as idiots, because civil rights didn't come from anything but statism, but law and order, but government. And we need to stop referring to politics as a dirty word as well, and look up what that word actually means in Greek. And it means things to do with people. It means cooperation. You break everything down to the tribal level, the smallest tribe, 10 or 20 people living in relative isolation. They have some system of cooperation, some set of laws by which they govern themselves. That's government. That's politics. They get together, they have a discussion. What are we going to do about this? Whether it's dictatorial, whether it's democratic, no matter how egalitarian it is, no matter how fair it is or unfair it is, that's government, that's politics. When an anarchist group gets together and discusses how they're going to run their little organization, that's politics. When libertarians get together and discover how they talk about how they're going to use government to create less government, that's politics too. That's government too. So everybody's got to cut the crap, really, with all this nonsense of pretending to be anti-government, because there's no such thing. You don't want government. What you really want is war. That's essentially all you get. So all you're going to get with no government is war. What you're going to have is majorities doing huge damage to minorities. What the civil rights movement in the 1960s did was have protests, not anti-government protests calling for a different type of government, right? They called for constitutional changes to give African Americans and other ethnic minorities, racial minorities, the same rights as white people in America, okay? What actually granted those rights was government action. What they were calling for was government action. It was when Eisenhower and JFK and LBJ, it's John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Baines Johnson, of course, when these presidents, these imperfect presidents, these guys who were not Bernie Sanders, okay? These guys who were Joe Biden, or they weren't even as progressive as Joe Biden. I mean, LBJ, the guy who escalated the Vietnam War, this guy was the one who signed these laws that Martin Luther King fought for. He didn't do it just because he's like a brave, great guy who was the greatest champion. Don't throw away your victories out of an idiotic sense of purity. Purity is the enemy of success. Perfectionism is the enemy of success. Nothing works that way in the real world. We have to get away from this completely counterproductive notion that you're going to create some sort of a utopia. There never has been a utopia. There was no fucking Garden of Eden, okay? We evolved out of lower creatures. You ever watch a nature documentary? You ever watch a nature documentary and watch how different species of animals behave? A male lion kills the female lioness's cubs so that he can mate with her. He doesn't ask her permission. He rapes her, basically. That's nature. Nature is brutal. Nature is horrific. You ever watch chimpanzees? They go to war over territory with each other. Now, bonobos, they just have sex with each other constantly. But the fact is, humans are animals, and we're instinctual. And we do a lot of the horrific things that we do because we're dumb, instinctual animals. Racism is a symbol of our unevolved, animalistic, instinctual nature. Sexism is a symptom of our unevolved, animalistic, instinctual nature. Nationalism is a symptom of our unevolved, animalistic, instinctual nature. I can go down the list, of these prejudices and these ridiculous forms of behavior. And one of these types of behavior that's very instinctual, and it's related to the fight or flight response, and it comes from a very primal sort of survival mechanism, is that when we perceive a danger, like an overreach of government, right? Like police that can get away with murder, right? Because the police unions protect them, and no matter what they do, it's justified. And because of institutional racism, it's more justified if the victim is not white, especially if the victim is a black male. But that's just one example. Whether it's a dictator, it's a particular law you disagree with. This notion of talking about anti-government, this is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And it's instead of actually wanting to solve a problem, what you're basically saying is, I want to complain about this forever and achieve nothing. That's really what you're saying when you call yourself an anti-government protester, or when you say there are no statist solutions, or when you you leave the issue, you're leaving the issue unresolved, and you're continuing to complain about the issue. Now, if you're going to be an activist, I don't care what the issue is, you have to be focused on the fact that you're trying to accomplish something. You're trying to actually help. If you're not trying to actually help, you should just stay the fuck home and shut the fuck up. Really. You have no business being an activist if you're not actually trying to win. Win for your cause. What the fuck are you doing? You're just wasting everybody's time. You're putting people, in some cases, putting people's lives at risk for a losing strategy. So remember that what you're trying to do, no matter what the cause is you're trying to improve government, not do away with government. Unless you're a complete fucking idiot, then maybe you really are an anti-government protester. And in that case, I hope you're completely ignored in the entire by the entire political spectrum. You don't deserve attention if you're an anti-government person. You really don't. The other term I wanted to talk about is the media. And this is where activists really get this wrong constantly, over and over and over again. The media doesn't fucking exist. There's no such thing as the media. There's a lot of different media outlets. When you say the media isn't talking about this. I go immediately to Google and put in whatever topic you just said the media isn't talking about. And I find all different sorts of media, whether it's the so-called mainstream media or the so-called alternative press or the liberal media, the conservative media, whatever media you think it is. All of these different media sources are talking about what you just said the media isn't talking about. It happens over and over and over again. And usually, even in your own discussion about it, you reveal the fact that the reason you know what you know is because you heard about it, or you read about it, or you saw something about it in some sort of media, right? Some sort of media let you know about it. So understand that journalism is more important than activism. Without journalism, the activists don't know what the fuck is going on. Really. Most of the activism happens because journalists reported on something, and that's how people knew that something was going on a wide scale. So let's retire these two idiotic terms, can we? Anti-government protesters, let's instead call them protesters, and just refer to what the cause is, right? Not anti-government. They're not anti-government. They're calling for changes to government, okay? And let's not talk about the media. Let's talk about specifically this media outlet told me about this. This media outlet gave me the facts that I have about this. Acknowledge the fact that journalists go out, in some cases risk their lives, to let you know what's going on. They go into war zones, sometimes paying with their own money, freelancing, with no guarantee they'll be paid anything, risking their lives to find out what's going on. Talk to people who've seen things, eyewitness things on the ground in a fucking war zone. Get the real story of what's going on, come back, have to struggle to get paid anything for the story, for it to be published. Sometimes nearly lose their lives, lose loved ones, etc., go through horrific experiences to find out for the rest of us what's going on in a war zone. And then they come back and they have to listen to people say the media doesn't tell us the truth, and watch people on the internet make up crap. Invent, the war in Syria is a perfect example of this. Everybody's got a bullshit story about the war in Syria that they made up of whole cloth while they claim the media isn't telling them what's going on. Claiming that the war is all the fault of Russia or the United States or Turkey or Israel, or the war is a war between the Syrian government and the Syrian people, right? But the sort of people that blame the media are the sort of people that don't listen to firsthand reports. They don't listen to experts, because they're the sort of people that are being manipulated and are very easily manipulated and very gullible people. And I'm just going to wrap up this little rant right now. And I'm going to be doing more of these because I'm very frustrated by my situation. I don't get to leave the house. I don't get to do protests when something happens. I don't get to participate that much. And it seems that people watch videos more than they read blog posts or listen to music. No one listens to the protest songs I write, and they take a hell of a lot more work than doing a little rant like this. And you know, I got a lot to say, and I got to get it out there because it's really, really hard watching stupidity just burn the world down. All right, thanks for listening.